Build Your Business listeners. This is Matt Reynolds, your host for the podcast, and you are listening to what we are calling the legacy episodes. And really, these are the pre-episodes that really led to this podcast, the Build Your Business podcast. This is really my life's work and my brother's life's work in building your business. And so they were originally published in the Barbell Logic podcast as part of the Principles or Coaching Success series, but really touch on similar topics to the Build Your Business podcast: how to improve your productivity, how to set and accomplish your goals, deprioritize urgent tasks, to focus on what is most important to you, and most importantly, to become a better person and leader and business owner overall. I'm proud to bring you these podcasts. Again, many years of life's work, several years of podcasts, and several decades of business ownership. Hope you enjoy them and learn from them. You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show. You're listening to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm your host, Matt Reynolds. This is another episode of the Coaching Success series. We'll dive right in today as we usually do. I want to talk about something that people don't talk about very often, which is burnout. And I want to talk about my experience with burnout, when I've had that in my life, when to look for it in your life, what to do about it, right? So burnout is essentially a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress, right? It occurs when you feel totally overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet the constant demands of life, and specifically the constant urgency in the things that you hate. I had a conversation with my mom yesterday. We went and had coffee. We do that, quarterly or so. Traditionally I was closer to my dad. You guys know I lost my dad a few years ago. My mom and I have gotten quite a bit closer over the last few years. We had a great talk yesterday. Life has been so busy lately for me. Business is great. I love what I do, but I was on 3 straight weeks of travel. Went to the acquisition.com event with the Hormozis and Mission Control. Went from there to Northwest Idaho for a Christian event that I was helping my pastor and his wife with, because they own a coffee company, Reformation Coffee, which is a fantastic coffee company. Shout out to Reformation Coffee. And flew straight from Northwest Idaho to Austin for a military conference. And so I enjoy travel. I've talked about this before. I was raised so poor. I flew back to Springfield, Missouri. I was born in Houston. I flew back to Springfield, Missouri when I was 6 weeks old and didn't get on an airplane again until my honeymoon to Mexico. And since then, I fly almost every week. And I do enjoy travel. And the uber extroverted Matt Reynolds, I notice over the years, has turned into, I still enjoy spending time with people. I love people, I love working a room and having great conversations and talking about the business. But then I love actually going back to my hotel room, even completely by myself. Love spending time with my wife when she travels with me. But there's something nice about just sort of curling up in the fetal position in your bed or taking a nap after too much social interaction. And so it's not that I hate that stuff. I don't, but it doesn't invigorate me the way it used to. I'm not a young man anymore. I'm getting old. And so to be clear, I am not burned out. I love my job. I love this business, but the business is crazy busy. We have a million moving parts. One of the things we did, as I mentioned in previous episode, was Mission Control set strategy deployment for the next 6 months, really at the tactical level, and then kind of long-term strategy through, say, 2027. That's all super exciting stuff, but boy, there are a bunch of moving parts in this business right now. And when you travel, one of the things, especially when you travel for business, and actually probably when you travel for vacation as well, because you try to work a lot less, things kind of pile up. And so you come home and, all the Zoom calls and meetings that you would have normally done, you couldn't do during travel. So then you come home and you just get walloped with meeting after meeting after meeting. And so it's been a little bit of that, and I'm just tired, but I'm not burned out. because I love what I do and my staff is incredible. I have an incredible supportive staff. There's just all these moving parts. On top of that, for me in the moment, and this is why I met my mom for coffee, she was just wanting to catch up. And honestly, I didn't have time to meet with her, but it's my mom. So we met for coffee yesterday morning. We had a good conversation. She was just wanting to get caught up on all the things. And so caught her up on business and caught her up on my church. We're under contract for a building. The church has met in my living room for the past 2 years and 3 months. We had 70 people at church. On Sunday, it's exploding, which I realize for some churches that run, mega churches that run 2 or 3 or 5,000, that's nothing. But for us in a living room, it's an enormous amount of work. So Sundays are exhausting. So Saturday for me has to be my quote unquote Sabbath or rest day. So it's the rest day. Sunday still for me is the Lord's day. It matters, but it's not relaxing. That's for sure. So I start prepping for church and setting up chairs and moving furniture around about 5:30 in the morning, grind coffee, make coffee. I mean, here I am, CEO of the company. I'm doing this stuff, which I'm happy to do. And it's been an honor and a joy to be able to host our church. But I'm at the point where we had, at the end of church after service, we have a fellowship meal together. We all eat lunch together. It was casserole day. There's usually a theme. And I had 17, basically 9x13 pans of casseroles that I had to cook, heat up. We have 2 ovens in my kitchen. We have commercial kitchen appliances. Grateful for the previous owner having put those in. I need about 4, but have 2. And so in each oven, I could get 4 9x13 pans of casseroles. So I could do 8 at a time, and I had 17. Plus we have a food warmer in the butler's pantry, which is just a fancy word for where I make my coffee and where the pantry is. Could also have a couple 2 to 3 in the warmer, which goes up to 200 degrees. And so during church, while my pastor's preaching, I am running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to get the casseroles as hot as they can, pull them out, put the lid on them, put them in some sort of, heat saving container, put new casseroles in. So everything comes out on time at noon or whatever when church is over, and it's just totally exhausting. So we've got that going on. At the same time, we're under contract for a building, which is so exciting. The building is a beautiful building that was built in 1946, brick building, beautiful church. Also things like securing the financing for the building and the inspection for the building and making sure it doesn't need a new roof and it's got a basement, or are there any like water leak issues and things like that. I take on a lot of those responsibilities for church as well, even though I'm not a pastor of the church. I'm just one of the leadership team members. So that's busy. It's busy. And then family life is kind of crazy right now. And my relationship with my wife is fantastic, but it's back to school and we homeschool, but we also use a classical model that meets on Mondays. My wife teaches all day on Monday to basically what would be 7th graders. And then I also have an 8th grader that goes with her and goes to a different class. And then my 19-year-old just graduated from cosmetology school. I talked about that last week. She started a full-time job. But, there's like a lot of life change, and there's life change. And we've talked through things like with her boyfriend, and they're looking forward to getting married, and we're trying to make sure that they're prepared for that. And there's a lot of stress around that. And so there's just like everything's just busy. Now, here's the difference. I'm not burned out because even though, and I recognize that consistent stress, even if good stress, can burn you out. I feel pretty good. And my sleep has not been great the last 6 months, but over the last 2 weeks has been fantastic. I've been sleeping 7.5, 8 hours with lots of deep sleep, like 4 hours of deep sleep a night. So that's really helped tremendously. Certainly a lack of sleep can lead to burnout. And so as I think about my experience with burnout, my first experience with burnout was not me, but was actually seeing it in my dad. I saw it in my dad twice. One time in the mid 80s, he was finishing seminary. So here's my dad with a civil engineering degree, but has to go to seminary all day during the day. So how does he support the family? We lived in Memphis, Tennessee. That's where the seminary was that he went to. He would load Federal Express. That's where FedEx is headquartered, is in Memphis. And it's very central to the country, and would load airplanes. So the guy's sitting there having graduated number 1 in his class, with a civil engineering degree, but feels called to the ministry, going to seminary, writing papers, reading, all the stuff you have to read when you're in seminary, and then immediately leaving seminary and coming home, and he would eat dinner with the family, and then he'd work the overnight shift at Federal Express, and then come home at, 3, 4 in the morning, and would sleep 4 hours and get up and go back to seminary. And I watched my dad essentially break during those 3 or 4 years that we did that. At the same time, he had a major leadership role at church. He wasn't the pastor of the church, but major leadership role. And so that was busy as well. And I noticed the change in my dad when he just kind of broke. And it was just burnout. He was just burned out. And it wasn't more than that. Not like his personality changed or anything, but you could just tell there was this level of exhaustion he couldn't get over. That was the first time. And then the second time with my dad was really at the end of his ministry career as a pastor. And I was in the 8th grade, and he had just grinded so hard as a pastor to try to grow, a little Baptist church that grew into actually a pretty good sized Baptist church in a small town. Everything went well, and there were no, nothing bad happened in the church. There was no scandal or anything like that. But I just watched him work himself to the bone. And I think he even loved most of the work. And certainly he loved being a pastor and loved preaching. But I think ultimately the administrative task, the lack of budget for a small church like that made it so that he had to bear the burden on his shoulders of all those things. And so I watched him burn out from that. And so he took a break from the ministry, which he never really returned to. We moved back to Springfield, Missouri. He went back to becoming a civil engineer. We went from very, very, very way below the poverty line to middle class overnight, which was a crazy change for us. I was in the 8th grade, halfway through my 8th grade year. And then, he took leadership roles at church later on in life, but was never a pastor again. And so I saw it in my dad. And then I personally have experienced it twice. And the first time I experienced, I didn't really know that I was experiencing it at the time. Later, I look back, but it was really at the end of Strong Gym. At the end of Strong Gym, we were in this constant battle. There were 3 owners, and 2 of us were kind of on the same side, and to this day are still good friends. And the third was not on the same page, and their family had sort of pushed us out, or were in the process of pushing us out. And I can remember that in one of the last weeks, maybe the last week that I was there, we hosted the big state powerlifting meet for Missouri. I was usually the head judge and the MC. I would do both. And I had the head mic, like the Garth Brooks microphone. And then I had my assistant working the table with the attempt cards and whatnot. And we had run tons of meets. I mean, probably 12 or 15 meets in the time that I owned Strong Gym. And I can remember people coming up to me afterwards or after we had left the business and said they could feel a difference in sort of my enthusiasm, for lack of a better term, in running that meet. Like typically I was really excited about these things, and I was just so burnt out. As the last place I wanted to be was judging a meet at a gym that I knew I was going to be gone from in a week or 10 days or whatever. And so that was definitely had some burnout there. And I've told the story before. Took my family as soon as we sold the gym, sold our portion of the gym, took them down to South Padre Island. And this was in December. And so we went south, and my kids didn't have a passport. And we stayed there for almost a month in a condo down kind of on the beach and try to figure out what I was going to do with my life. Now, the good news is that what I figured out what I was going to do with my life was what I'm doing right now, which is Barbell Logic, online coaching, Barbell Logic. It wasn't all bad, but there was a time that you have to take a break. And then the last time, which is not going to be a surprise for anybody, was in the midst or towards the end of the big lawsuit. And again, won't get into lots of details, but for anybody that's been in a lawsuit, or if you don't know, one of the hardest parts of the lawsuit is the discovery phase. And so you have to present, essentially the opposing attorney will ask for hundreds, and what for us was thousands and thousands of documents and documentation. And we had to produce those. Now, luckily, we are very organized and we were able to produce those, but no one could really produce those other than me. I couldn't pass those off to virtual assistants or somebody to gather those things. And I certainly wasn't going to put them in a big file box and drive them to Tulsa and hand to Kiesling's feet, our attorney, and which would have cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars more for him to go through. And so I can remember that, I was working 16-hour days just gathering information on a lawsuit that I felt shouldn't exist. And at the end of that, that's the first time that I think my staff saw me burn out. When we finally got through the lawsuit and I thought everything's going to be okay now, I crashed. I can remember Rachel and I went to England and Scotland. We had a great time. We had a blast. I wasn't depressed. I just didn't want to work. I didn't exactly know where the business was going at that point. I was home for about a week and then went to Guadalajara and met up with Harry Fafudas, one of our coaches, and spent a week with him and had a blast there. But I just couldn't get myself to do the stuff I needed to do on a day-to-day basis. And things pile up. And so then you get more overwhelmed. And then I'm not someone who procrastinates. I get up and knock stuff out every single morning, and I kind of wake up excited to do that stuff. That's how I know I'm not burned out in spite of all the busyness that's going on today. And so I want you to look for those things. And this really comes back again to the book, to Undoing Urgency, and to what we try to provide for our coaches at Turnkey Coach. If you are spending an inordinate amount of time in urgency, especially in urgent work that you hate, that you cannot stand, you have to figure out how to get rid of that, how to purge that from your life, how to pull the weeds, how to delegate it, how to automate it, and get some rest. Make sure you get some sleep. Do the things that are enjoyable. Do the things that invigorate you. Exercise, lifting, walking, going out to the pool, getting out in the sunshine, taking a vacation, things like that, so that you can reset yourself and not burn out, because burnout can be a real problem. We've seen this with lots of founders who they just burn the candle at both ends for too long. And so I've said this before, that you can work 16-hour days when you own a new business and you're a founder and this is obviously painting with a broad brush, but my experience has been in working with lots of other founders and my own personal experiences, about 18 months, you can burn the candle at both ends. And after 18 months, if you're not back to something around a 40-hour work week or 50-hour work week, or even a 60-hour work week, I think is doable. But an 80-hour work week or a 100-hour work week for 2 years plus straight, even if you love the work that you do, will eventually burn you out. And what you'll find is that you'll start to hate the thing. And so for me, one of the things that the way that expressed itself at the end of Strong Gym is I didn't want to train clients anymore in person. I was just tired of it. I was just, it's the same people every time. There's all this downtime between the sets, and they're talking to you, and you've got to kind of put on the face and pretend to care. And that sounds terrible, because I actually cared about the clients. I just didn't always want to hear the stories about every single thing that was going on. And so you may be listening to this and be thinking like, yeah, that's me. I'm like, well, that's why we created Turnkey Coach. That's why it's there. And so instead of coaching 1 client per hour, I can coach 25 clients per hour. And I just stick to the stuff that matters. And I still create relationship, and I still ask them, how was the conference this weekend? I've told you this before, like, how was the, your kids' softball tournament? How was the vacation? I know you went to the lake this weekend. But that's it. And so it allows me to do the things that I really love, which is still coach, still break down technique. I really don't get sick of online coaching. Occasionally, certainly I wake up and I'm like, I'd rather just get right into the CEO stuff and not to the urgent. But it's protected me from burnout all these years. So after 16, 17 years of business ownership, I've had 2 cases of burnout, and they were short-lived. Both of them lasted probably. The first one, when I sold Strong Gym, probably lasted about a month. And then I got excited about what was coming in the future for what is now Barbell Logic. In the one after the lawsuit, it lasted a little longer. It was probably 3 months that I did the work, but I did the minimum effort work. And I can remember my mission control team even asking me, like, are you okay? Like, you're just not your typical ambitious self. And sort of pride myself in getting more work done than, I'm not saying anybody on my team, but, compared to the average worker, I knock out 4, 5, 10x what an average worker can do because I'm able to focus and get it done. Well, you're not able to focus and get it done when you're burned out. You allow the distractions to come in. You allow the phone notifications to come on. It's easier to doom scroll and do the things that, like, because you're just so unmotivated to do the work that you have to do. And so the lesson here is, for most of you, you're not burned out, but many of you are probably on the edge. And so figuring out where to pull the weeds and delegate or automate or get rid of the things that you can't stand so that you can work on the things that actually matter, that are either urgent and important or are important and not urgent, but the things that you actually enjoy doing, that is key to avoiding burnout. And if you are in a burned out mode, if you're working 60 hours a week in a gym and you can't get away and you can't take a vacation, you've got to change your life. You have to have a paradigm shift to say, like, I don't actually have to do it this way. This is the wonderful solution of Turnkey Coach, is that you can move a life. You own a gym and you're in there 60 hours a week and you're coaching 40 hours a week. And the other 20 hours a week, you're in there, you're cleaning and you're waiting for the next client and you've got an hour break here and there. You can actually move the entire gym to a 24-hour key card access in-person coaching hours at your schedule, and let everybody else online coach and online coach them through Turnkey Coach. By the way, you can coach your in-person clients through Turnkey Coach as well. So one of the things we've tried to do in Turnkey Coach is help our coaches avoid burnout. And what has happened, not just for block coaches, but what's been really amazing is for turnkey coaches who don't work for block, is within 2 weeks of them transitioning over to Turnkey Coach, almost every single time they email us back and they say, one, I can't believe how much better your service is. And two, I can't believe how much time you're saving me. Well, now you're not in this constant state of trying to play catch up with the work because you just got 2 hours a day back. And so that's how you avoid burnout. Or if you're in burnout, you pull the weeds, you take the vacation, you get the good rest, and you do what you can to reset yourself. And then while on that vacation, when I go on these vacations, and I think I've had talks about this on the podcast before as well, I take the first several days and I don't do any work at all. I just lay out in the sun, tan, go out in the water, drink margaritas, eat good food, take naps, spend time with my wife, wink, and just do the stuff I really enjoy. And then what I find is that if I do that and do it well for a few days, then all of a sudden, like my brain, the fog starts to lift and the burnout starts to lift. And I start getting excited about what's coming up in the business so that as the vacation ends, and this is another great kind of one rule of as your vacation ends, if you get really depressed, you have to go back to work, you're doing the wrong thing. As my vacation ends, I get really excited to come back home and get back to a normal schedule. I love my home. I love my work. I love the work that I do. If I'm on vacation, I'm not going to do as much work on vacation, no matter how much I love what I do, because it's vacation time, it's family time. And so that's what you have to do. If you're in burnout mode, you've got to reset that thing. And so again, I know that the doctors that are listening to this or the neuroscientists or whatever, like I'm not exactly sure what's going on at the neurological or physiological level, but it feels like adrenal fatigue. It feels like CNS fatigue. Again, I just caveat, I know that's probably not exactly what's going on physiologically, but that's what it feels like. You've all been there. Your heart rate is 10 beats higher than it should be. You can't seem to calm down. You can't seem to get in parasympathetic tone, like this relaxed state. You might be self-medicating with alcohol or something else to get yourself into a relaxed state. Those are all signs of burnout or right on the edge of burnout. And so you've got to watch out for it. Right. So we absolutely value good, hard, voluntary hardship work here at Barbell Logic and in the company as a whole, and for people and young founders that I mentor. But the reality is that for some of you, you're doing so much, so long, so often, and much of that work is work that you hate. And so it just continues to bog you down while the rest of the stuff builds up that you feel like you're drowning. That's what undoing urgency is about. It's about how to not drown, how to pull the weeds. And so look out for burnout. You may either be on the edge of that, you may be in the middle of it, or you may not be there at all, but just log it in the back of your brain and say, like, this is something that I have to have knowledge of exists as a founder, as a business owner, as a coach, as a gym owner, that this thing exists. And if you don't address it early, it can become a big problem, just like anything else, right? If you find the cancer early, they usually can get the cancer. If you have these pains and you're not sure what they are and you let it go longer and longer and longer and longer, and the next thing you know, you're in stage 4 cancer and you're dead. And so you've got to be careful not to grind yourself into powder as a founder, as an owner. This is definitely not a podcast that is telling you to be lazy. That's not what this is about. It's about if you're there, if you're completely unmotivated, if you're totally exhausted, if your sleep is terrible, if you don't want to train, if you have no libido, if you're like all of those things, those are pretty good signs of burnout or that it's coming quickly. And so take care of yourself, do the things that matter, make room for the important stuff, spend good time with family, great food, great conversations, good sleep, time off, notifications turned off, take the phone and put it in your bedroom, plug it in. Nothing's terrible. Like, the rest of your family is going to have their phones on them. If something happens as a family emergency, they're just going to call your wife or call your spouse or call a kid, or the word's going to get to you, right? Carrier pigeon's going to show up at your door. Like, you're going to figure it out. So like, get rid of the phone, turn the notifications off, close the laptop, do the stuff that you love, that brings you joy and peace and tranquility, and make sure that you're not moving in a direction towards burnout. Again, you can do it for a little while. You can burn that candle at both ends for a while, but it is unsustainable long term. And if you try to do that, it's going to lead to burnout, even if you love it. But if you're doing it and it's something that you hate, you don't have 18 months, right? You got about 3. There you go. There's Burnout. There's another episode of the Barbell Logic Podcast Coaching Success Series. Hope you guys have a great Friday and a great weekend. I hope next week is fantastic for you. We're going to be heading out to Ogden, Utah to meet with Hill Air Force Base. We landed another big military contract, and so we're going to be meeting with the officers and the stakeholders there. Super excited to go out there again with the team and spend some time, hopefully a little cooler, a little drier out there than it is in August in Missouri, and should be a good week next week. Have a fun interview coming up next week with one of our members. I won't give too much away. One of our clients, I guess, who started as a Barbell Logic online coaching client, went through the academy, and now has a thriving coaching career. And so we'll interview her tomorrow. So that'll come out next Friday. So should be good. Excited for the next few episodes to come out. You guys have a great week and see you next Friday.